Alrighty, I'd love to call this second regular meeting of the Meridian Parks and Recreation Commission to order. Tonight is February 12th, Wednesday at 5:30, a little after 5:30. May I please have Rachel call the roll?
Yes, thank you. Dom Gelsomino.
Present.
Joe Greer.
Present.
Heath Bevan.
Present.
Jennifer Bobo is absent. Abby Hutchins is absent. Michelle Jensen is absent. John Nesmith.
Here.
Craig Steele is absent. Jessica West.
Present.
And Councilman Brad Hoagland.
Present.
Thank you so much, Rachel. Quorum being present, we'll move on to item number 2 on our agenda, adoption of the agenda. May I have a motion?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Greer,
I'd like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda for tonight.
do we have a second?
A second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bevan. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It has been so ordered. Item number 3, approval of the minutes from our January 8th first regular meeting of the 2020 year. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes from last month?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Greer.
I would like to move that we approve the meeting minutes from January 8th, 2020.
Do I have a second?
Mr. President, I second.
Commissioner Bevan. Thank you so much. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So ordered. Alrighty. Item number 4 on our agenda is announcements. We have our monthly upcoming events by our wonderful Shelley Houston. The floor is yours.
Hello, Commissioners. We're finally starting to pick up steam, and some dates are getting attached to upcoming events, so that makes us happy. In particular, the most important first, this Friday, February 14th, we'll be holding an open house at the Meridian Home Court, which is, of course, our hard court facility over on Taylor Avenue. We've got a lot of enhancements and improvements and changes that we're eager to show off and explain, and so the public's invited. And I'm sure we'll also be entertaining all the folks that'll be there anyway because of pickleball, and we have some mommy and me type classes that day as well. Not sure what else. But anyway, if any of you are so inclined, we would love to have you stop by. We'll have some refreshments. Like I say, a chance to tour the facility, meet some staff members, and the pickleball people would even be happy to give a little demo or let you give pickleball a whirl, as long as you wear the right footwear. So anyway, home court open house this Friday from 10 to 1. Do stop by if you're out in the neighborhood. Beyond that, our calendar of events, I'm just slowly beginning to populate it. I would point out that we're headed into a 3-day weekend, so we won't be here Monday, but we'll be back at it Tuesday morning bright and early. On February 19th, we're going to celebrate the retirement of our city arborist, Elroy Huff, here at City Hall. We're going to have a kind of an open house style reception from 3 to 4:30 down here in conference room A and B. And so if you want to come and wish Elroy well, he's been with the city about 40 years. I mean, 20. I was doing dog years. I was doing city years. 20 years, sorry. So we'll be paying a little tribute to him. I think we have a little gift or whatnot to give him. So that would be nice on the 19th from 3 to 4:30. Something else neat. We had an opportunity to have hockey tickets to the Idaho Steelheads donated for our city volunteers. So on the evening of March 4th, a fairly large contingency of city volunteers, these are the folks that sit at the front desk or do the park patrol, they'll be able to go and have a little social experience with one another at a Steelheads hockey game at CenturyLink Arena. So we're happy for that. Our next commission meeting will be March 11th. And beyond that, we're, like I say, a little bit on cruise control. Our new activity guide will come out April 9th, so we're working on it. We did get one little neat, unexpected bit of publicity not long ago. The Meridian Press had a neat article and photo about Intermountain Pet Hospital's donation that's allowing us to get a couple water features, one for each section of the dog park over in Discovery Park. Dom was totally instrumental in helping choose what would work, and then costing it out and pursuing someone for the donation. These are the same folks that help fund Story Bark Park's agility features, and so they've been good partners to us. So Intermountain Pet Hospital, you might check out the article. It was good to see. Meridian Magazine's also interested in what we've got coming out there, so we'll show them about the new. They're like fire hydrant-shaped water sprayers that the dogs will be able to engage with, and they're not a huge waste of water because of the circulation system, and they're only activated at certain times. So anyway, we took all that into consideration. So are there any questions at this time? No?
Thank
Okay.
you so much, Shelley. I want to give a lot of credit to Mike
Oh, yes.
for his mentorship and helping me out with that project. Also publicly thank Intermountain Pet Hospital once again for their generous donation. Shelley, one quick question. For the Meridian Main Street Market, how
Yes.
are we looking this year as far as reservations and any new prospects for
I
any new-
haven't heard. I do see that the market opens on April 11th. It'll open for the season. They're sticking to the 9 to 2. So I think they've been tasked with, come on, let's get some momentum going. Let's grow it.
Garrett can give a little bit of an update.
Yeah, okay, more produce and whatnot.
Wonderful.
So,
Yeah, so right now the call for vendors is open and out. We met with Shree, who was we're contracted with to run that. So it's call out for vendors right now. We're hoping to get more, and like Shelley was saying, we're hoping to kind of get more and more and grow it. From what I heard in the last couple of years, it's been about 70-30, with 30% being youth vendors and 70% being more adult vendors when it originally started to being youth. So we're still trying to gain traction and get some mentorship in there with the adults running farmers markets, the youth. So we're hoping to get it growing. So that's kind of the update.
yeah, if you know of anyone who might be interested in becoming a vendor, they could go to meridianmainstreetmarket.com. There's a website and an application with all the explanation of what it means to be a vendor and the fees and whatnot.
Wonderful.
Anything else? Are we good?
That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shelley. So moving on to, there's no old business, so we'll move on to new business. We have a presentation on the City of Nampa Pathways update by Mr. Cody Swander. Am I correct in saying that? Swander. I apologize. The Park Superintendent for the City of Nampa Parks and Rec Department. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I am excited to come out and talk to you about what Nampa's doing and specifically how it relates to City of Meridian. Kind of just a quick history of our pathway planning process. Prior to 2011, we didn't have an official pathway plan. The first one came out that year after a lot of hard work from Nampa's Bicycle and Pedestrian Advisory Committee to the mayor. And that committee is made up of different city citizens, business owners, different folks all throughout the city of Nampa that have a love and an interest in improving bicycle and pedestrian facilities throughout the city. And when the plan kind of went out, first of all, it was kind of just looked like a lot of spaghetti thrown on a map with help from those citizens and our public works director at the time. I think over the years that it didn't take long before that 2011 plan was sort of outdated, and we were growing a lot faster than the plan had anticipated looking forward. So work went into an updated plan, which actually just came out last month. It's brand new, Nampa Bike Plan Part 2, 2020. And it's available for anybody to see on the City of Nampa website. So it's absolutely there in this. This is just like a printed PDF version of it, but everybody can print them off themselves or go check it out on the website. But we took a lot different approach this time. We worked with Alta Design, who was the company that we contracted with for the first plan. So this is really an update. They had a lot of the base data already in their system. And what we did is wanted to make it more interactive with the public. We had a big interest from the citizens, what their input might be, more than just the focus group of people that were on this Bike and Ped Advisory Committee. And so they went out and they did this web map feature, which was really kind of cool. It allowed, and we blasted it everywhere we possibly could, trying to get the word out so that citizens could go onto this web map and put a route that they believe would be a nice connection for them to have. They would put a destination site. They could put obstacles to travels that they have, that they may have run into. And we received a lot of feedback from that initial planning. And it kind of all poured into the plan and what that's going to look like going forward. We also wanted to focus on some things that were absent from the previous plan, such as pathway standards. What did the standards for the pathways look like? When developers develop areas within Nampa, one of the things that we do, and I think you guys are very similar here in Meridian, is we ask them to deed and dedicate property that fall along this master plan of our pathway system. But we didn't necessarily have a good detail of what the construction methodology for these pathways would look like. Sometimes they did a fantastic job and they were built to road specs, and other times it was just asphalt over native dirt that we had problems with 2 years after they walked away from the project. So that went into that. A lot of consideration went into this new plan, help from engineering. We invested $60,000 was the budget for this update for 2020. 50% of that came from Parks and Recreation, and the other 50% came from our engineering division. And we had a lot of assistance in the process from engineering, working with Alta. They had the minds to know kind of what a concept plan or a master plan would have in-house more than Parks and Recreation staff would. So we relied on them quite a bit. We also relied on a representative from our P&Z staff to assist with kind of the coordination of the public information, the public meetings. We had the reps from Alta come out 2 different times where we held public meetings in our city library and had citizens come in and visit with the stakeholders such as the mayor, the design team. We had developer representatives. One of the big things for Nampa is our relationship with the irrigation districts, because all of our pathways, or many of our pathways, actually follow irrigation district structures that they manage. And so we wanted to make sure that the biggest players were involved with this process. In Nampa, that involves Nampa Meridian Irrigation District and Pioneer Irrigation District were the 2 that we had reached out to. There's some smaller ones in the Nampa area too, but those are the big players. And making sure that they kind of had a hand in what this plan looked like. One of Nampa's kind of philosophies on our pathways, it's a little different. I know that Boise gets a lot of notoriety for their beautiful green belt, their Boise River green belt. It's fantastic. It's built to a very high standard. Lots of dollars go to there. But we felt like Boise's, that was kind of their shining gem. But what do the neighborhoods really have in the residential areas? You kind of have to get in your car and drive to the pathway. So Nampa's philosophy was we really wanted our pathway system to extend, maybe not the best quality landscaped construction methodology, such as that, but to have at least accessible areas all throughout the city. So taking public input into place and to looking at kind of where the needs are and where the structures made sense, such as some of these irrigation canals, drains, ditches, and things where we could put the pathways is kind of what guided our final product here. And it's available, like I said, for anybody to pull up off of the City of Nampa website. This document here I'm assuming you guys can see kind of on your screen, this is a quick introduction. This is not this entire plan. You'd have to kind of go in there and search that through the city's website to find the PDF and print that out. But this introduction page is, and I can show you how to kind of find this at a later in a second here, but this kind of talks about the plan in the introduction going forward, how we kind of got to this plan of updating from 2011. The vision and goals talk about kind of all the things I glossed over: safety, connectivity, livability, health, the importance of why Nampa wanted to do this. Benefits of walking and biking, kind of just some statistical information that I believe is not necessarily Nampa specific, but national. This slide here talks about that public outreach, and you can see on the colored map with all of the different dots, those are actual locations that we had citizens go and put these points on the map when we were asking for help during public periods. So you can click on these things, zoom in, and you can see that this one is a barrier to biking. And so somebody wrote this, Mr. Dan Narsavage had written this on this date when approaching Iowa South, whatever. So it allowed us to kind of get in here and see all what the public was after. These were one of the things we took into consideration when we were putting it together. We kind of looked at all these, and they're categorized by color on what type of, I think there's a legend here. Oh, maybe not. It might have been on a different document. But anyway, I think that different colors indicate what types of, these are things I want to see, or these are barriers to we have, or this is a destination site that I'd like to make it to. And they were actually able to draw kind of spaghetti lines on the map, which was fun to look at what the citizens wanted to go, where they wanted to be, and we could have even a spot on there where you could almost second somebody's nomination, like we need a path to get to this park, and so, hey, that's a great idea, I'm just going to give it a thumbs up or something, so we could kind of see how much support came from those. We found that to be very useful. Under facility types, we not only looked at off-road pathways, which is kind of Parks and Recreation's baby and why I'm here to talk today, but we also looked at bike lanes, side paths, buffered bicycle lanes, separated bike lanes, bike boulevards, crosswalks, pathways. All of those different things are all sort of addressed in this in this updated plan, which I think before we really just had on the older plan more of the on-street. It was more on-street focused, where I feel like there's more of a balance with side paths and off-road pathways in this new updated plan. But the real, I guess, highlight is here is this interactive map with the network recommendations. So this, on this last tab, network recommendations, is actually our new plan in map view. So when you look at all this, like I said, it kind of looks like a bowl of spaghetti, but you're able to zoom in on different areas of the map and kind of see what we already have. The solid green, and this one has a legend here at the bottom. The solid green is already completed pathways. The dotted dark green are future pathways, and you can see on that legend there's side paths, separated bike lanes, and all these other sorts of designations of improvements needed for improved bike and ped travel throughout the city. I understand specifically Meridian is interested in possibilities of connections to Nampa, which is fantastic. We love to see that because we want connections to our neighboring communities, and Meridian is definitely one to our east that we want to have. If you zoom back, you can kind of pull up the map here on the, I guess, east edge of our town and see where these dotted lines stop, and that's kind of where our jurisdiction stops, and I think yours picks up. I've identified several areas that, we name our pathways after the bodies of water that they follow, typically is how we kind of get our names for our pathways. And so there's the Purdom Drain, there's the Boise River Greenbelt, rails with trails. Indian Creek is a possibility. That might be more toward Cuna end of things. Mason Creek, Reidenbach Canal, and 10 Mile Creek are all all waterways where we have identified on this master plan we would like to head to the east and connect to our neighbors over here in Meridian. So I think just as you guys build out, this might be a useful tool to find on the city's website to be able to pull this up when planning and zoning or Parks and Rec are looking at future possibilities. I'm sure land is quickly developing on your west edge just as it is on our east edge. And so that's how we achieve most of these connections. As this land's developed, it's completed by the developer. One thing that I did want to mention at this meeting is that we enjoy a great relationship with irrigation districts in our city, and Nampa Meridian specifically, we have a master agreement with that organization that allows the city to place our pathways, our permanent pathways, on their permanent easement for maintenance of the drain. I know not all irrigation districts are that accommodating. The stipulation there basically is they can still access their drain for whatever maintenance purposes that they need to clean them or service them. And any damage that they cause to the city's pathway is back on the city for repair, and it's not their liability to take care of. So far, the relationship works really well. They give us a notification typically when they're planning on a maintenance activity out there for their pathway or for their drain facility, and we take as much action as we can to try to protect our pathway. We've done things like laid bark chips down 2 or 3 inches deep, so their excavators don't chew up the asphalt. We've laid plywood sheets out if it's just a short distance so that they can get out there and perform whatever maintenance. And then there are times where we have to kind of follow them after a maintenance activity and do some asphalt repair. As far as a presentation goes, that's about all I had. I didn't know if I hit the nail on the head of what you guys were looking for. If you guys have specific questions, I'd love to try to answer those.
Are there any questions?
Mr. President?
Mr. Sitaway.
I assume the layers of all the different pathways, bike facilities exist on a GIS layer?
Yes.
That the city has. While we could, print our own map and then look at this and compare them, it might be an interesting exercise just to get the GIS layer, print it together with ours, and just see how they line up. How would we go about requesting that?
I'd be happy to request that from our GIS division. I'm not sure how to separate those things
Sure.
myself. It would take somebody that understands that computer stuff a little more than I do, but I'd be happy to make the request and get it to you however.
That would make it really simple to compare if we just had
Sure.
our data printed on one map and could look at it that way.
Yep, I'd be happy to make the request and see if we
Okay.
can let you know what I find out.
Fantastic. One other question, if I might, the spaghetti map, as you call it, we call ours the same thing. Does Nampa intend to own and maintain all of the facilities shown on this map, or do you intend long-term that some of those facilities would be maintained by HOAs or other entities?
Going forward, we're asking for the property to be deeded and dedicated to the city with the intention of performing maintenance on it as we own it. Right now, we have kind of a hodgepodge of that situation. There's many places that predate the 2011 plan where a pathway has gone in with an easement and we're on somebody else's property, but we have a legal easement for the pathway to go there. Mm-hmm. And so that does exist in several areas at this point, but as we go forward, we're asking for that to become City of Nampa property.
Okay. And then one last question, if I might.
Yes, absolutely.
The one of our main facilities one main pathway that I didn't hear mentioned, and maybe it doesn't enter your jurisdiction and goes too far north, but 5 Mile Creek, I see 10 Mile Creek, which we will definitely tie into that. But it's further north. We just pan north a little bit. Let's see. Trying to,
Maybe back out here.
let's see. Yeah, just scroll left, or pan left just a little bit so we can pick it up in Meridian just a little bit. Okay, right there. Let's see. Yeah, it might just skirt the edge. We'll have to look at that. But yeah, it may not actually enter Nampa.
I don't believe it was identified on our plan as one that have a pathway. I think that you can see the most north pathway, that's the Boise River Greenbelt. Nampa's impact area does go up to that kind of south channel there, so that's the furthest north, and then along Joplin Road was not necessarily following a waterway.
Yeah, so you do actually show pathway along the Boise River on the south side of the south channel. Is that correct?
Yeah, and that's as far as Nampa's impact area reaches.
Kind of planning the same thing, so we'll connect there as well. So that's great.
Yeah, Nampa has that little kind of tail that sticks out on that north edge and that short distance there.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely. Any further questions?
Mr. President,
Commissioner West.
so when you're looking at all the pathways where they end close to Meridian, is there a priority as far as of what you're aware of, is which one would likely go in first or
The-
be created? Because I noticed it says proposed 2019. I was just wondering, timeline, did I miss that? Which pathways?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't believe that title is very reflective of it. Nothing is identified as far as prioritized. The one that's making the most progress is the Purdom drain. We're just seeing, and it's following development really. So the Purdom, I believe, is this one here. We're seeing most of the development happen along that
Thank you.
stretch. And then, one other thing that I wanted to mention on here that I failed to earlier is one of them is a rail with trail program that follows the rail line from, around the golf courses heading back east toward the Idaho Center area. And I know that we've had conversations with City of Meridian about the rail with trail, so I did include that one on the list.
Thank you.
Mr.
Any-
President?
Yes, Ms. Warren.
Thanks. It's really interesting to hear this. I'm glad to see your plan. Makes me think it would be nice to have an update ourselves. In regard to Commissioner West's comment, we have a bit of action on the Purdom drain now with the 10-mile crossing development, and then west of 10 Mile Road, north of the interstate, there's some applications coming in where we're talking about pathway also along the Purdom drain and continuing, in some cases it just kind of runs north. In some stretches it runs north of the interstate and then it kind of angles up. So that might be another likely connection since that's happening for us and you as well. Just a comment.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's good to know where our first available or potential connection point is. It kind of gives us an idea of where we need to kind of look at further to align our side.
Our primary focus for city dollars going into the pathway system are really to close gaps. We have a lot of gaps in the existing pathway where, due to geographic obstacles or property ownership issues that may have been cleared up since the pathway has gone in, a lot of the dollars that Nampa earmarks toward the pathway system is going to kind of connect those gaps in the center. I think before we're really reaching out on the periphery areas like heading toward Meridian, most of that growth is driven by development.
Any further questions? I have a couple questions for you, Mr. Swander. During the campaign last year for mayor, Mayor Simison really laid out some of his visions for pathways here at Meridian. My question to you is, what is Mayor Kling's visions for the pathway systems of Nampa? Do you notice any differences from what you're seeing in the feedback that you're getting from the citizens of Nampa in their, engagement and involvement on this new software and being able to provide feedback? And then I'll go on to my second question once you're done.
This was a big deal for us. Getting this pathway plan update funded was a big deal. So I believe Mayor Kling's priorities are on seeing an increase. I mean, she supported this throughout getting it through the city council to find the dollars to set aside to do this. She could have easily said, no, that's not a priority. We'll work off the 2011 plan, because there were some priorities on there that were identified years ago that didn't get quite completed, and our focus has changed, and I think she recognized that and was able to kind of understand the growth and the demand. She was at a lot of these public meetings with the citizens, so I feel like her support was strong by being there, making herself present to answer questions from the citizens, and having the fact that she has the advisory committee that she places citizens on to kind of be her eyes and ears for the public out there with this focus on pedestrian and bicycle facility improvement, to me speaks to her commitment to improving the city of Nampa's pathways.
Wonderful. Thank you. And my second question to you is, I know that you mentioned in your presentation just a little bit ago that you guys are trying to walk a fine balance with the budget that you have with more of a utilitarian purpose for the pathways versus an aesthetic one. What, if applicable, in the areas where it is applicable, what are you filling in the open spaces along these pathways with? You know, are they trees? Are they indigenous and pollinator plants that are, you know, indigenous to Idaho, to Nampa? So I know, like I said, you guys are walking a balanced line on utility and focusing on making sure that those dollars are spent on making it the best pathway it can be versus aesthetics. So what are your...
Yeah, well, exactly that. Our focus is just trying to get the asphalt on the ground. And so in most areas in these developments, we're asking for property to be deed and dedicated to us. We're asking for 20 feet. The pathway standard in our design is 10 feet. So we don't really have a ton of room. And one of the things, the master agreement with Nampa Meridian Irrigation District, where most of this growth is happening, is no trees anyway along their irrigation structures. And so our standard of care is the asphalt goes down, we have the shoulders on the sides of the asphalt, and then we spray for broadleaf. We do an herbicide application off of the shoulders of the pathway for broadleaf, and whatever native grasses come or don't come, we're fine with. So we don't do any irrigation typically. We don't do any kind of plant improvements. It's pretty much just the asphalt pathway and whatever improvements need there for the shoulders to keep it, you know, secure. Now, that said, that's most of the areas. We do have, our most recent pathway is going to be an expansion of the old Stoddard rail line. The city did purchase an abandoned rail line from Union Pacific Railroad, I think last year, maybe late 2018, and that's a little bit different. That's 100 feet wide compared to the 20 feet wide that we have, and so that area we are actually doing some greenscape improvements there, putting irrigation systems, planting some trees, just to kind of beautify the area and make maintenance a little easier than instead of trying to have 20 feet or 10 feet of the pathway in the center with trying to take care of waste ground on the side. We're actually improving the full 100-foot width. So that's kind of our one exception to kind of our general rule of just the asphalt pathways. And in a few areas, for example, the irrigation district along drains and other waterways, they're fine without that area being fenced. But if we have a pathway that's near a supply lateral or supply canal, they do require that being fenced. And so we have the added cost of fencing involved with that. So in some areas, you'll see a fence, I guess depending on what side you're on, whether that's an improvement to the area or not.
Wonderful. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Any further questions? Hearing none, we really appreciate you joining us, and we hope to have you back more often.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you so much.
Thank you. Our second presentation and update is on Canals Connect Community Coalition, that's a mouthful, by Eric Willitson. Am I saying that correctly?
Yeah,
with the Conservation Program, and manager for the Idaho Chapter Sierra Club.
Yeah, and I also have Austin Watkins.
Yeah, I'm Austin Watkins with the Idaho Conservation League.
Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
The floor is yours.
Cool. Thank you so much for inviting us in here, and then also for being a leader on this issue along with Nampa. The conversation in Boise about pathways along canals is one that's of like doubt and impossibility. It's been really interesting over the past year talking to people. And they'll say, well, how are you ever going to get an irrigation district to work with us at the city of Boise or in Ada County? And generally the response very quickly is, well, Meridian has 30 plus miles of pathways. Nampa has 19 and a half. I should maybe double check those numbers. And it very quickly turns the conversation from impossibility to something that's actually possible and a viable option to improve access to recreation and alternative transportation in Boise. And we both live in Boise, so that's what why I'm referencing that right now. But we've been starting to have these conversations all over the Treasure Valley over the past year. And we've put together a coalition of, these are the logos we have up here are the ones who have like officially decided that they're on board. But we have people in the rooms from organizations like United Way and St. Luke's and other nonprofits who haven't officially signed on yet, but they're in these conversations. We've also been reaching out to irrigation districts and talking to them a little bit too. And the question we're trying to answer is, what does an integrated valley-wide bike and pedestrian path system look like? And obviously from the last conversation, that Meridian in Nampa has a very robust answer to that question. But I don't know how much that is happening elsewhere in the Treasure Valley, but I think it's starting to. And as a coalition and as organization partners, really what we're proposing is trying to fill a space for public advocacy for a valley-wide off-road bike path system. And that doesn't mean we're targeting anyone with like what you might see like the Sunrise Movement or like other direct action. The idea is just to help show that there's public support for a valley-wide system. And we've also been meeting with irrigation districts and just letting them know, like, we're not coming after irrigation districts. We don't see them as a bad guy. We know that they're having these conversations and are open to developing partnerships. But we want to create that visible public support. This is something that, you know, again, going to reference Boise, but there's planning documents from the mid-'70s identifying this as an opportunity. And it's never come to fruition there, but there's still that general public interest. I used to work at the Land Trust of the Treasure Valley, running volunteer stewardship projects in the foothills and along the Greenbelt for habitat restoration and trail maintenance and recreation management. And this was just something that came up all the time, but there was still that air of impossibility. So we're trying to change that conversation to help push along a valley-wide system. You know, and then also making sure that we're ensuring safe practices, making sure that we're not encouraging people to trespass on any pathways or right-of-ways along irrigation canals that are not open to the public. And then also preserving and enhancing quality of life. I'm sure all of us as Idahoans can agree that we have like a super high quality of life here in the Treasure Valley and elsewhere across the state. But as we become a more urbanized area, it's really important that we're trying to continue to provide that high quality of life to all of our residents. I was super grateful to hear Cody mention that, you know, there's people in Boise who have to drive to the Greenbelt to access it and use it. And they don't have that out their back door. And I'm so glad that Nampa is looking at how can we provide these resources to everyone in our community, as well as Meridian. And that's something we want to bring to the rest of the valley. So as a coalition, we put together these guiding principles, agree to develop a shared master vision of X miles of connected canal pathways and other routes by 20XX. We actually haven't defined. That's actually on our meeting agenda tomorrow. Develop a liability and pathway design common standards, and outline city implementation. And a lot of this, honestly, is taking what Meridian and Nampa are doing so well and just trying to get other cities to adopt it. And then also making sure that we're recognizing success in the Treasure Valley as we're talking about this publicly, letting people know this is from the Meridian Master Plan, Pathway Master Plan. I'm sure most of you have seen that. But trying to also heighten the fact that the Treasure Valley has a rich agricultural legacy, and it's something that we can help preserve as things become more urbanized across the valley. So I'll hand it over to Austin.
Yeah, and I think starting with the story of how we got on this program, about a year and a half, 2 years ago, a few of us got together and we were talking about various issues in the Treasure Valley that cities across the region were facing because of growth. Transportation quickly rose to the top, and so we were brainstorming some ideas of what we could do related to transportation. This kind of gets to Mr. Swander's point that he made. Myself and a colleague of ours, we both live on the west end of Boise. To get to Greenbelt, we love the Greenbelt, but to get to it, we have to get in our cars and drive, and then we recreate or get on our bikes. And both me and this colleague were saying how we often use this canal. This is, I guess I'm incriminating myself here, but this is Settlers Canal along Chinden Boulevard. It is a very nice pathway to avoid Chinden. Lots of people use it. And this kind of kicked off the conversation of, the Greenbelt is great, but we need more connectivity throughout our neighborhoods. And so we came up with three kind of guiding principles or kind of guiding visions that we wanted to make sure we were hitting on as we pursued this. The first one being what's within a mile of our homes. And this is simply, if we have the GIS data sets, if you look at community hubs or community regions, what's within a mile of those and where can we prioritize those pathways? The other thing, building on that connectivity, close to other mixed-use pathways or mixed-use transportation modes. That way, you build on that connectivity. Say you want to ride your bike on a pathway to a bus stop and then broaden your alternative transportation options from there. And then the third is a safe, used public space. This is a critical component to this. We've talked to some members of the component or the public about this. We've heard a lot of concerns around safety from a couple different angles. One, canal safety and children. Two, just the safety of pathways along people's homes. And we want to make sure that safety is a priority. People learn to respect these. Ride along a pathway, as you all know, because you have pathways. But nothing Eric mentioned, safe practices, ensuring safety always. And then we have citations to some studies that show pathways actually increase neighborhood safety. People are using them. There's more activity, more folks along the pathway. And so just trying to really prepare ourselves to some of the any of the comments that the public might face or might provide to us and be ready to address those comments. So those are our three guiding visions that we have going into this project.
And some of the examples that we're building off of, especially Western examples, is Phoenix has had a municipal-wide system for a long time now. It was actually the irrigation service company down there actually was the one that initiated having this. So that was something that was just built out as the city was built. Denver is a different story. So the Denver system is about 132 miles now. And it was that kind of respectful public advocacy and show of public support that eventually got the irrigation district to come to the table and say, this is something that we want to help provide the community with because it's obviously that it's important to them. So that's kind of where we're taking our page from, of just showing that there's different, I know wineries in Canyon County are really interested in having a connection into this. There's small businesses up on the bench, but also incorporating this system into what's already existing, what efforts are already underway. The example I like to point to is Jerome Mapp out in Caldwell is working with Middleton, and they've just bought some park space to finish building out the Greenbelt to connect those two cities. We're not going to go rolling in there with a bunch of Caldwell residents asking them to build a pathway along a canal that's just half a mile north or south, right? Like, where are there existing efforts already underway, and that we can utilize our efforts to help tie that in and identify those opportunities. Another good example is I live in the Veterans Park neighborhood in Boise. ACHD actually has these two right-of-ways that are open for pedestrian and cyclist use that kind of cut between streets. And when ACHD adopted the low-stress bike network plan, we actually went as a neighborhood association, wrote them a letter and said, do you know that you own these properties? Can you include them in the plan? You've already given us confirmation that you're going to leave them for public use. And so trying to utilize some people on the ground to help identify where there's already opportunities in some of these communities that maybe don't have the vision and foresight like they have here in Nampa. And then there's also other just systems all over the country. The CO Canal Pathway in the greater DC area that connects 4 different states. The Farmington Canal Heritage Trail that connects Massachusetts and Connecticut. The Old Erie Canal State Historic Park in upstate New York that connects, I think it's about 70 miles long. And then Idaho Falls has also come to agreements with irrigation districts out there to have a community-wide system. And so we just want to help kind of propagate this message that this is something that is doable, and then also help to provide the tools to other communities to help make it happen.
And as Eric mentioned, when we first started this work, we got a lot of pushback of like, this is never going to happen. A lot of people were thinking back to decades ago when there were no pathways along canals. Telling those success stories has been a great way for us to show folks, no, this is possible and it's actually already been done. But there's a number of other factors that play into this that we think have kind of moved the needle into a region where this is really possible. One of those things is we can't outbuild traffic. The more lanes we add to freeways, the more people are going to come and fill those lanes. And so diversifying our modes of transportation can be really powerful to avoid gridlock and just avoid congestion just like this. Another thing is the rise of micromobility. ACHD has a stat, I think it's 42% of trips are within 3 miles of the home. So right now, a lot of people, if they lack that safe pathway that they can use or safe transportation mode to get around, to run their errands, they're getting in their car. When instead, whether it's bikes on canalways or walking on a canalway, electric scooters, buses, the rise of micromobility has changed a lot of things, as I'm sure all of you are aware. But we think that's also adding pressure to increasing these systems. Eric's going to touch on this one.
So the photo on the top left is the capital improvement plan for ACHD. And then the one on the top right is a projected arterial lane mile of congestion across the county. So over the next 15 years, from 2016, so I guess over 20 years, they're projecting to see basically a 4-time increase in traffic across our roadways. And then that chart on the bottom, no one has to remember all those numbers, but those are actually in the thousands of dollars, but that's the cost of 1 lane mile of road, dependent on what type of road it is, whether it's interstate, arterial, collector. And the city of Nashville in 2010 was actually identified as the worst city for pedestrians and cyclists in the entire country. And since then, over the past 10 years, they've added over 300 miles of bike lanes, pathways, and other pedestrian-friendly sidewalks. And now their next 10-year goal is that by 2030, they want to reduce the number of car trips by 40%. And so one of the things, ACHD has actually been a really unlikely ally. I think initially we were a little nervous about talking to them, and then we started talking to them, and they were actually super on board with this idea of creating an interconnected pathway system, because they recognize that there is opportunity there for them to get cars off the road and relieve their tax burden to provide wider and wider roads that are just going to get filled with more traffic. So that's just like an opportunity of hope a little bit, I think.
And this is probably the slide I'm most knowledgeable about. I should have opened with, I'm not a transportation expert. I'm just a guy who likes to ride my bike. But in my normal work, I do a lot of air and water policy development. One of the trends that has us nervous is the worsening air quality in the Treasure Valley. Most folks think of air quality, they think of wildfires and the smoke pollution that we get. A lot of pollution comes from automobile the transportation sector. So this comes in particulate matter, those very fine pieces in the air. But the scarier one is ozone. Ozone isn't directly emitted from cars, but things like nitrous oxides and volatile organic compounds get in the air and they interact with sunlight, and that's what forms the ozone. So it's directly linked to transportation. The reason that's more scary, there are federal limits on how bad the ozone pollution can get before certain limitations kick in. The Treasure Valley is on the cusp of violating those limits. These are called the National Ambient Air Quality Standards. You'll often hear these referred to as the NAAQS. When that happens, that really puts a strain on economic development. It becomes more difficult for businesses to get air permits, not only new businesses, but expanding businesses. This was a story, I don't know if you guys can see the date, back in October of last year, but it talks about emissions increasing nearly 150% in the last 2 decades. While we have been growing, one of the things that this research showed was that this increase in air emissions outpaced growth. So it's not directly correlated with growth. This is exceeding it. And so that's one of the big motivators. That's why I get to work on this in my professional capacities, because it's directly related to air quality in the Treasure Valley, and more pathways in all forms, but this group particularly focused along the canal routes can help alleviate this stress that communities across the Treasure Valley face. And I do want to note, this also places a burden on public health as well, not to overstate the economic impacts, but yes, public health is important.
And this is just the end of the slideshow. We just finished with what would the story of the pathway system in the Treasure Valley be? The one thing that we didn't bring up that I forgot to mention is that we're also trying to come up with this policy toolkit that we can unload. I did mention this part. We can unload to other cities to adopt. And it's largely based off of what Meridian and Nampa are already doing. We know the city of Boise is looking very seriously at it. John Ottenhorf, who used to be the president at College of Idaho, he lives in unincorporated Canyon County, but very close to the Caldwell border, and he's really interested in helping champion that sort of thing out in the Western Treasure Valley. So another part of this too is like building out a coalition of champions in every city. Larita comes to our meetings. I noticed her on your slideshow, Cody, and she wants to help push this forward too in Nampa. And then John also, we're starting to think too about how can we help do some private fundraising to help push this along, help cities with their master plans and just implement it sooner. I know Idaho Falls submitted a federal Department of Transportation grant, and they were able to speed up implementation of their system, I think 5 times faster than they were planning on. So.
Do you have a slide of all the folks we've talked to?
Yeah. So
This is just a list of some of the folks that we've talked to about this. When we first started out, we really focused on just going out and doing in-person meetings. And we've kind of divided it up into these different, some nonprofit and community groups, some cities, counties, but just to give you a sense of the folks we've talked to.
we can take questions too.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, gentlemen. Do we have any questions from the commission? Ms. Warren.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thanks for the presentation. Austin, I think you mentioned data on pathway safety and how it actually sometimes enhances a neighborhood's safety. Kind of knowing a limited amount about SEPTED, I tell people this all the time, but I don't really have any data to back it up. I'd be curious to share that, or if you could send that to me or send some links.
Yeah, and I actually stole that tidbit from Eric, so he might be able to speak more. Yeah.
And yeah, or Eric, but I know that something kind of seems counterintuitive, but in the crime prevention classes, they'll tell you that. I just don't have access to anything very current that talks about it, and I think it would be really useful in a lot of discussions with HOAs and just in plan review in general.
Yeah, we can
Thanks.
definitely get that.
Yeah.
Any other questions? I have a couple of my own. I just want to make sure. Gentlemen, one quick question. I'm a very data-minded person, and so when you go out to these constituencies, what are you finding are their opinions and thoughts with regards to the pathways, with regards to environmental stewardship when it comes to pathways and the individual cities' responsibilities on the environmental stewardship as we continue to develop our pathways?
Do you want to take irrigation and I'll take the other?
So one of the things that's been coming up recently, I've been kind of doing like open house presentations, so like this presentation in half the time and then having this open conversation. People from Northwest Boise neighborhood, and then staff from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service are working on this idea of like, how do we create urban greenways for pollinators and birds? When they heard we were talking about this, I haven't had the meeting yet, but he's a colleague of mine that I've been working with for years on other things. His name's Sean Finn. He's really interested in learning how like U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service might be able to help provide resources to have pollinator plants on the inside of the pathway, away from the canal, to help bee populations and monarch butterflies that are in decline. So there's definitely that conversation is starting to happen. I know Farmers Union Canal has beavers in it, so the Northwest Neighborhood Association loves that and have been vocal about wanting to keep it that way. So,
and I just want to add, I think although the original group was kind of pretty environmentally focused, as we've expanded this, we've heard from multiple groups, multiple different reasons for being involved. We've worked with Safe Routes to School and talking about children getting to school safely. We've heard from city representatives about transportation and aside from an environmental aspect, just getting people to and from where they want to be. St. Luke's, they had a really interesting, their initiative is looking at how do we get our staff and our patients in and out of here in an effective manner. Traffic doesn't help anyone, especially ambulances in a hurry. So while there's always kind of this environmental background, we've seen a lot of support for a variety of different reasons, which has been interesting.
Wonderful. I would suggest, gentlemen, to add on to one of your checklists here, to reach out to the Meridian Community Garden and the co-op gardeners. They have both a community garden as well as a pollinator garden in our Julius Kleiner Park, and our director there, Julie, is very keen and focused on expanding her project for pollinator plants. But I appreciate the answer to that question, simply because, everything kind of goes in hand with economic and environmental stewardship and as well as the public health. So I appreciate that. Thank you. Any other questions?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Jensen.
as you go out and you give these presentations to each of the city recreation commissions and other groups, what are you asking of them from a championship standpoint, from a support standpoint? What is your end goal as you give these presentations, and what can people do, especially, the 6 people who I know watch our commission meeting? What can people do to help facilitate what you're trying to accomplish?
I would say, one, from a city leadership perspective, we'd love to see an adoption at some point of like a valley-wide master plan, and we know that there's steps that we have to take to get there. But that's something that I think is really appealing from like a tourism standpoint, not only here in the Treasure Valley, but Tom Helmer from Idaho State Parks is working on like a big loop that connects Cascade to Weiser and then around over to Horseshoe Bend. And he's working on getting a connection off of that master plan up into that loop, and also like connections into wineries. So I think there's just a lot of opportunity for economic development. So that would be one ask of city leadership. As far as volunteers, I think one thing that's been really interesting, and still trying to get a feel for what's on the ground in every community, but there definitely has been kind of this groundswell, at least in Boise, of neighborhood associations, really in HOAs, really wanting to know how they can help on the ground. So identifying where those opportunities are, and just being a vocal champion to kind of turn that narrative on its head that this is something that's possible. And then also, this is something that I think is super important. Again, I just try to spread the message, like the irrigation districts they're not the villains in this narrative. Like they just have their purpose that they need to protect and their capacity to protect it. And allowing city leadership to take the time to develop those relationships, just like what's happened here.
So to that end, have you asked for representation from the irrigation districts to be committed to your effort?
Not formally yet.
Any other questions? Wonderful. Actually, just one that popped into my mind right now. I'm not financially savvy on the costs of indigenous plant or pollinator plants versus non-pollinator plants, but what are your guys' recommendation for cities who are trying to maintain a budget on, we want to, let's say we want to push more pollinator plants. It helps the environment, but obviously they're more expensive. And what are your suggestions on, promoting that pollinator plant increase, but maintaining a solid, tight budget?
I'll just throw out some ideas. We haven't talked about this, and this is an interesting thing, but I think using this group to throw out ideas like that and have us sort of brainstorm, do we have any financial resources or know of some that we could either partner? I know from the NGO side of things, when we apply for grants, it always looks better if we have partners, and the more diverse partners, the better. I am only thinking about this because I was just at a talk earlier today on Nampa's stormwater program and how they have an Adopt a Creek. And I think the potential for an Adopt a Plant is really cool. If people adopt sections of pathways and they can pick which pollinating plants and sponsor that. That's only coming to my head because I stole it from 3 hours ago, but yeah.
So when I worked at the Land Trust of the Treasure Valley, just to add on to that, Sean Finn, who I mentioned earlier from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we started a very loose coalition called the Treasure Valley Native Plant Network, and basically found that through that network, you could grow plants with like volunteer groups or school groups College of Western Idaho, actually, their horticulture program takes care of the plants over the summer with their interns. And we found that we were growing plants, I want to say it was a sixth of the cost of like just purchasing them from a nursery. So if there's someone that is really interested in that, it sounds like you are down, Mr. President.
I have a personal goal this year.
Okay. I'd be happy to follow up with you and connect you in with Sean. And,
Thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Mhm.
Gentlemen, you're welcome anytime. Thank you so much for your presentation today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Moving on, we have an update. We are full of updates today. City of Meridian Comprehensive Plan from Brian McClure, our Comprehensive Associate Planner. Welcome, Brian.
Members of the commission, thanks for having me here tonight. I was asked to provide just kind of a general update, but if you have any specific questions, you're welcome to interrupt or ask me that at any time. So last year, December 17, 2019, the City Council voted to adopt a new comprehensive plan. It contains approximately 500 policies, new and old. Major chapters are organized by themes from the public involvement process. And more importantly, and a little scary, there's a lot more work ahead. The plan is 2 documents. It's the plan we just adopted. It's also the existing conditions report, which is something we update every 3 years or so. It focuses what we are now, what we have been, and is needed to meet some of the requirements the state has for a comprehensive plan. Why plan? The first reason is because we have to. That's not always the best reason, but we do. We have some of the things that we have to do as part of LUPA, the Local Land Use Planning Act of 1975, is look at how we can protect private property rights, ensure we have adequate provision of services, protect sensitive and natural resources, and then a few other things you see on that list there. It also identifies 17 things that we need to address in the plan. There are the whole metric there, the whole scale, but you'll see recreation is one of those things there. The other reason we have to plan, and the reason we should plan, is community visioning. What do we want our community to look like? What is important to us? What do we want to be in the future? What other plans do we want to elevate to the land use process? So the Parks and Recreation Master Plan is adopted by reference in this plan. We consider that with land use decisions. A whole range of other plans are also adopted. Look at our jobs, housing balance, what other things the community feels is important. The state says we have to do 17 things, but the sky is a limit on the other things we want to address as part of the comprehensive plan. The other important thing with the comprehensive plan is it's not a stagnant document. We update it yearly. We look at the implementation plan, the policies, the goals, objectives, and action items within that. Before I move on, this is something I've just been showing to everyone I can. As part of this last plan, I came to awareness that a lot of people really don't realize where Meridian is. It seems obvious we're west of Boise, but they don't understand that Nampa is on one border, Kuna is on the border, Star and Eagle is on the border, and Boise's already there. We are completely surrounded on all sides. As more time goes by, we will become increasingly boxed in, and our identity is really important to us. And that's something we hope to get out of the new comprehensive plan is what do we want to be? Because at some point we're going to be one giant metropolitan area, and if we want to be special, we have to start working on that now. So the process, we identified 5 value themes: premier, evolving, livable, vibrant, and connected. These are what we heard over and over again, and the elements beneath them during our outreach process. We had, it was about 2 years, and on a side note, probably half of those were at those events we had were at community parks. Each one of those value themes has vision statements, and then under each one of those vision statements are our implementation, the goals, policies, whatever you want to call them. Those are all, the whole document is framed on what we heard from the public. Probably a little bit more relevant for you all, 53 goals, objectives, and action items are under the Parks and Pathways or the Livable chapter. I mentioned it already, but parks and pathways, we were at public parks, and so that probably helped. But I think people just really like parks and pathways, and we heard that probably more than the next two things combined. It was really a big deal to everyone. You've heard the mayor's big on that. I think that is reflected in the new plan. Many other policies also related to Parks and Recreation are contained throughout the plan, but those are the ones, that's the number we have within that chapter. We haven't assigned any of the policies yet. We haven't assigned who they are, who's responsible for them, or how important that is. That'll be a next step we go through. We'll be having a conversation with department directors in the near future, and then sending those out for the departments and the commissions to look at, and then ultimately City Council to adopt. That process will pair with our new strategic plan. We're hoping that some of the policies that are more important in the comprehensive plan will work their way into the strategic plan with a much finer level of detail. Most of the Parks and Recreation policies appear to be of the ongoing type, the things that we need to keep doing on a daily, weekly, monthly basis. But there are several, approximately 13, that look like they'll have to have some sort of project, something to occur and be delivered. A side note, I guess, the Planning and Zoning Commission will be reviewing the ones that Community Development Planning are assigned. Hopefully you guys will see some of the ones that Parks and Recreation are looking at. Throw Steve under the bus a little bit there. The new plan it's a new plan. So we have a single document PDF. You don't have to sort through multiple PDFs. We also have the entirety of the plan available in a web browser, and it is responsive. So you can view it on your phone, on your tablet, on your computer. It is sortable, so the policy tables can be categorized, grouped, searched through, and the future land use map, which is a key component of the comprehensive plan, is interactive. That link there will take you to it. I will, just another note before I stand for questions. The policy table, I have provided that to Rachel, so if anyone's interested in seeing the adopted policies, you guys can request that. It's also available on the website. With that, I'll stand for any questions. Happy to drill into detail or answer any specific questions.
Do we have any questions from the commission?
Mr. President, I do the timeline on that for the review. You said that there are specific Parks and Rec department, so I imagine they'll go to Steve and his team, and they'll make recommendations and priorities, and then bring them back to us. And then when do you make changes or review them?
Commissioner West, we don't currently have a timeline. It'll be at the pleasure of the directors for that and the mayor. So we'll be starting it probably the next month or so, but we don't have an ETO when we hope to finish that.
Great, thank you.
Brian, one quick question. I hopped out of the steering committee a little early in the process, and I don't know if I just want to kind of refresh, because I know that in the data gathering process for the comprehensive plan, when going out into the public and getting their input and feedback, one question I had that I've just thought of that I've been mulling over was there at all a point in time where a question to the public would have been, have you been a long-term citizen of Meridian? Are you a new citizen of Meridian? And the reason why I asked that is because, have you noticed a difference in who prioritizes what when it comes to parks and the particular aspects of the comprehensive plan that affect our parks from citizen to citizen or demographic area to demographic area?
Commissioner Gelsomino, did I get your name right?
Yeah, Gelsomino.
Gelsomino.
Yeah, you're good.
That's a really good question. The short answer is we did not ask age. We did not ask how long they've been here. We did occasionally ask age questions, but both of those things were intentional. It upset some people, but we were actually very interested in what young people wanted. They're going to inherit this, and so whether they were 5 or 17, they didn't have to live here a long time, but we hope they'll stay. So we very much cared for people being here, but we didn't look or consider how long they've been here.
Okay. Thank you. Any further questions? Ms. Warren?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a comment. Brian has been really a huge help in terms of helping manage the pedestrian layer, and as part of this plan, stepped up and updated some of the pathways. He's brilliant in GIS, fellow landscape architect. Anyway, he's been an ally, and I would just like to thank you for that and let everyone know that he's been a real resource for me. So I appreciate it. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Kim.
I will add to that, honestly. I witnessed your patience through some of the meetings that got very testy, very fired up. So honestly, I commend you for your patience, your dedication, and your commitment on this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any
President?
further questions? Yes, Mr. Sidaway.
Brian, one of the things that the commission has had previous presentations on is the open space survey that was an outgrowth of the comprehensive plan. Have you heard any updates recently about it going out soon?
Steve, I've not heard any updates on when that's supposed to go out. I know at the last council hearing, when we talked about some of the priorities, it was supposed to go out quickly. Cameron is leading that. He may have already sent that out, but I don't know. I will find out for you, though.
Wonderful. Any other questions?
Mr. President, I would just point out that this isn't a question, but Brian's here tonight because at last month's meeting, there was a specific request for an update on the comprehensive plan. So hopefully this has fulfilled those desires and that request. If you're looking for anything else than what's been presented tonight, let us know.
One last quick thing. Brian, will there be a presence at this year's community block party from the department as far as, any further marketing, if you would call it that, on the comprehensive plan to the public that you know of?
Commissioner, I'm not aware of any. That is a really good question, though. We do have a number of extremely high-profile projects that we're being asked and tasked to do. So there might be an opportunity to share some awareness on those things. So I'll ask my director, but I don't know right now.
Wonderful. Thank you. Brian, you're always welcome back, and we appreciate the update.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Next up, we have our Parks and Recs Department Adult Sports Program update by Maggie Combs. Welcome, Maggie.
Thank you guys for having me this evening. So I just started as the adult sports rec coordinator just 6 months ago, actually today. So some of this stuff I inherited. So if I don't have questions, I may refer to other people also. So the 2019 year in review, our major programs were volleyball leagues. It's one of our biggest programs. In the winter, we had 118 teams, followed by the spring of 84 teams, and then in fall with 112. We moved into a summer, we host a fast pitch tournament. It's great getting the kids out involved in the tournaments and as well. It was 35 teams. We're looking at having a little bit of growth in that again this year, going up to about 40 teams, so that'll be great. The Volleyball Holiday Classic tournament hosted 25 teams this tournament. That tournament touches, I'll touch a little bit more on it a little bit later, but it touches the local boys community with Head Start, thank you. Head Start program to get the kids some holiday gifts and everything that might not be able to have Christmas. Softball leagues reached 100 teams in the spring-summer program, followed by a little bit of growth with the opening of Discovery with 105 teams. Programs, you can see that the programs kind of had a little bit of growth this last year, pretty consistent from 17 and 18, and then they bounced back up in 19. Not too much growth, but we will see a little bit of growth again here, hopefully in 2020 as well. And then the number of participants actually bounced quite a bit. You see that bounce up there. A lot more people getting involved, a lot more people bouncing on these teams. So we have a lot of partners and sponsorships. Townhouse Suites Marriott, they hosted our umpires for the fast pitch tournament. They donate some rooms and everything in partnership and being the host hotel. So teams that travel in from out of town, we recommend them going there. They partner in a great partnership. The volleyball tournament, we have so Walmart works with us. They provide us, we go there and do all our shopping, but they also provide a big basket worth about $300 for a raffle and everything. AJ Salsa, she donates salsa and chips for some great salsa gifts. Wazoo's partners and donated as well. Fast Lanes, they were able to give us 2 different donation prizes. Sockeye Brewery, Texas Roadhouse, European Wax Center. And then we also this year added a charity bake sale. This was the first time. Chelsea with the volunteers, she got her volunteers that do the front desk and all the different parks. A lot of them came out and volunteered to help bake goods and then come and actually be there and help sell. It was all donation only. So if you felt that it was worth $1, then you donated $1. If you felt it was worth $5, they donated $5. And a lot of people donated and was a great add to this and helped us raise more funds this way. Dudley Softball, they actually are a great sponsorship. They actually reduced the price of our softballs to help save us a little bit of money and continue that. And they're actually looking to donate some more product to be able to do some giveaways at like the fast pitch tournament and some of our league items. Additions and changes for 2020. I'm working on trying to find a vendor for our fast pitch tournament, have on site to sell t-shirts. It's something that the kids have requested in the past. I personally have run fast pitch tournaments for youth, and so that's something I've noticed being in that world and realm. I'm looking for a local vendor, have not found one yet, but will look and if I have to source out nationally as well. We are changing the format of our softball league for co-ed and men's leagues, and they're going to go on specific nights. This is already done currently in the volleyball. That's a structure that was changed prior, in the 2018-19 season. So we're going to do the same thing with softball. We're going to look at hosting a 4-on-4 summer volleyball league this year, and that to be hosted at home court to utilize the facility during the summer and the off months of when it's a little bit slower there. We're looking at adding a new rec coordinator position. It's currently in the hiring process. It will help run more backyard games and tournaments, still exploring some more ideas with that, but backyard games being like cornhole, horseshoes, ladder ball, kind of those avenues, and then some of the smaller leagues and everything, adding some more community and family-friendly leagues and everything, getting more people out that may not be sports-driven but want to do other things down that avenue. We're going to change up the championship awards. It's consistently always been t-shirts. Wherever you go, that's what they are. This last fall, I changed it up and we did beanies for the teams, something a little bit different. Got some feedback, positive and, missing the t-shirts. So kind of looking at every season, trying to mix it up, change it up. So if it's consistently the same winner, they're not consistently just getting a t-shirt. For 2020 winter season, which we're currently in, they're going to receive water bottles. And if you want to see, I'm sorry I didn't bring one. I currently have them upstairs in my office. So feel free to stop by anytime and check those out. I'm always looking for new ideas. So if anybody has any recommendations, looking for new ideas. We are started using a new scheduling software program. It helps streamline it to the teams, makes it very clear and concise to get the information out to them. And the feedback from teams so far has been that they're liking it. They're able to sort their team and get information to their players quicker and faster. Some challenges. Basketball officials. They were hiring them in-house, which was a little bit of a struggle trying to get good officials in-house and bringing them in-house. For the current 2020 season, we've moved back and partnered back with USSOA Basketball Association. That's a local association here to provide basketball officials. Helps provide a better basketball official to the community and the public we serve. Challenges for 2020, gym space, we're consistently being maxed out on our gym space. If we keep growing this way, we're going to have to make teams and offer Fridays as an option, which is not a popular option for all teams, but that's what we're going to have to look at doing is expanding into the Fridays. And then field space with lights, same with, the softball and flag football plays on the fields that are lighted. That's gonna be a trouble, as well as moving into that realm of making sure that we have enough lit spaces to keep growing our leagues. Some fun facts about adult sports. The Holiday Classic tournament, that's a volleyball classic tournament. It's hosted at the beginning of November. We raised approximately $2,548. This helped purchase gifts for 55 children from the Meridian Head Start program. We raised these funds by their registration fee for the tournament, donations, raffles, the bake sale. Officials worked at a reduced rate to help with that. One team offered to donate, and some other people to buy gifts for other kids. There was 12 other children that Meridian Head Start had, so it's a big number of kids that we were able to help provide some Christmas gifts of needs and wants that they were looking for. During a normal night, our programs can host a variety of participants. We have 7 softball fields, which is about 340 people that hit those fields in a night. 6 volleyball courts is about 216. Basketball, if we're running 1 court a night, is 40, and 2 is 80. Flag football is about 3 games in a night on an average, and that's 36. So give or take, depending if teams are shorter, running extra players. During an average week, we have an average of 68 court spaces used, and that's a minimum of 800 people that come out and play on those facilities. And that's just during our fall season. We use home court, Boys and Girls Club, and then the local school gyms that we have a partnership with. Excuse me. In the month of August, there was 5,237 total runs scored, and that's just them running around the bases. It kind of adds up to how many times they touch a home plate, which wears and tears on the field and the bases, and we have to, replace those more often, which is great exercise, though. In the summer months, we have a lot of participants, and these are just the people that come out to the fields. That doesn't include the spectators that they come. And if a family comes with you, thank you, Rachel. You're looking at, if they have just one family member or their children that come out, and you see a lot of families that come out with them. And so if you add just double that number or triple that number, that's how many people are hitting our facilities and visiting our parks. Do you guys have any questions?
Do we have any questions from the commission?
Mr. President.
Commissioner Jensen.
Oh, hallelujah, Garrett. Finally, specific days. I've been bugging Garrett for years that softball needed to be on specific days, so thank you very much.
Well, no, it was already in the works before me, so I can't take full credit, but I think it will help streamline things and make things easier for families to plan, so you know that you're playing either on a Monday and a Wednesday or a Tuesday and a Thursday. So, thank you.
Commissioner Bevan.
A question on you're looking for a T-shirt vendor. Is that to make T-shirts for the teams, or could you explain what it is and what you're looking for?
Yeah, so a lot of youth tournaments across the nation, they have vendors on site. So as their child wants a shirt, it usually has a front logo design that it's about the tournament, and the back usually has a list of the team names, so then they have that momentum, so they can take it home and keep them. I mean, I was an avid softball player myself, and I can tell you I still have bags of shirts, which, because they're that keepsake. So I'm looking for someone that does on-site printing, because they customize them and do that. So, I mean, there's a lot of vendors out there. It's just finding, hopefully, somebody local that would be willing. The ones I've reached out to so far they don't print on site. But that's the nice thing about it. Does that explain?
So they actually bring
a heat press. Yeah, they bring a heat press and they have the designs. They put it on the front.
Colors and designs. Okay.
Yeah, it has a basic color design. They heat press them at the belts.
Well,
Commissioner Steele, I think it's time to expand your enterprise from glitter into shirts or glitter shirts.
Ooh.
What's funny is I do have a heat press and the ability to make T-shirts, but
do you want to come out?
No.
Mr. President.
Yes, Garrett.
One of the struggles we have is finding a T-shirt vendor is it's Memorial Day weekend. A lot of people are like, oh, it's a 3-day weekend. I'm going to be out of town. It's tough to find staff to do it, to be there. But jump on what Maggie's talking about is you go to all these tournaments, even from adults to youth, everything, everybody wants a T-shirt to bring home that says that I was there and things like that. And that's been one of the big things that we've wanted at that tournament. It's just struggling to find that. Maggie's got a long history of running tournaments like this, so she has a lot more resources that she can reach out to. So I'm excited to see what we can find and hope we can get somebody out there.
Any other questions from the commission or
President?
members of staff? Commissioner Steele.
Quick question on the T-shirt thing. Do you have an idea on sizes and that kind of thing? So you don't get somebody going in here blind as far as no idea what they're doing or needing.
Yeah. So it's 12 and under little girls all the way up to 18s. So knowing that, and we have an idea of how many teams are in each age group. So you would have an idea of where if we're looking for probably more in like, I would say more that adult small size is going to be our mass number quantity. I don't have projections, but I could talk with my past people that I've worked with on ideas of how many to project for a weekend.
Okay, I'm sure different ones of us up here have connections with different ones, and I know a couple different T-shirt guys, so I'll pass the word.
Thank you.
Any further questions, comments? Seeing none, thank you so much, Maggie. We appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
There are no workshops this month, so we will move on to staff reports by our Parks and Recs department. Mr. Sidaway, I'll hand the floor to you.
Thank you, Mr. President. Lots of moving parts, lots of meetings. I think you've heard a lot of the priorities. Pathways continues to be a big one. We continue to work and make progress on the community center. I still think we'll talk more about this at the agenda setting meeting, because I still am hopeful we will have a more formal update on that as part of the March meeting. That's currently the plan, but depending on when the next, I want to come with something to show you, and we don't. There's been enough just non-design activities related to urban renewal district formation and things like that. That's more comments. I'd like to come when I have the initial concept. It makes the most sense. That might end up being April, but I'll keep you posted. We are working on budgets. I'll be working with our liaison, Councilman Hoagland. We just started internally the first of our department budget meetings yesterday and today. So base budgets are starting. Budget workshops are not until June. So we've got a lot of upfront work that we're starting to do now, and we will, I think usually around the May, June timeframe is when we give a more formal budget update, when we know what actually is being presented in terms of enhancements, things like that. But we're beginning to work on that in earnest. I think that those are the main things that I feel that are already to touch on right now, and I'll stand for any questions.
Do we have any questions from the commission?
Okay.
Are you presenting, or are you going to, who's giving did Kim have any pathways update? Okay, Mike? All right. Mike, you're on.
Got it. Okay, thank you. So I don't know if you remember, but the story walk that we worked on with the library district last summer, that's going to be installed on February 28th. We have MIAC coming out to help us mount the story walk pedestals to some concrete pads at Kleiner Park. So then the library, their person will come back and put the actual stories in. So that's about ready to kick off. The 28th, the pedestals will go in. The piece of art at Renaissance Park is finished and in. If you haven't had a chance to see it, it's really cool. It's fabulous. I asked the guy that built it, Ken McCall, if he made any money on it, and he didn't. I mean, it's that he put so much effort into it. It's actually just, I mean, it's amazing.
Wonderful.
So if you get a chance, go take a look. There's a piece of art that's going to be placed in Champion Park as part of the same effort from last year. That's scheduled to be installed next week. So that's almost wrapped up. Working on Discovery Park Phase 2 design still. The signs for Discovery Park were installed last Friday. So if you get a chance, go take a look at those. Those turned out fabulous. The same artist slash fabricator that did the Renaissance art piece finished the Discovery Park signs. So just the craftsmanship and the attention to detail is really fabulous. I mean, it was almost worth waiting for, but anyway, they're done. It took a while. They almost had a birthday.
Wow.
But it was worth the wait. They're really, really cool.
Wonderful.
The dog sprayers are scheduled to be installed next week.
Wow.
So we're doing the water lines, and then the company's going to come out and pour the sonotubes and actually place the sprayers, and we'll make final connections. So those will be up and running here in about a week or give or take, a week and a half, something like that. No, we'll probably turn them on. Yeah, maybe. I mean, we got to. Yeah, we'll see. March. We're getting close to March. It'd be icy, but yeah, we've got to play the weather. And then for Kim, the James Court sidewalk widening project is the contract was awarded, and that's going to start construction the first week of March. We were missing an easement on that final stretch closest to Meridian Road. And we have a verbal agreement with the property owners and a settlement amount to purchase that easement. So they have the legal description, they've got all the paperwork. We're just waiting for a signature to come back, and then we'll take that to council. After we get that executed, we've got the contractor working on a change order to the current contract. So once we get the easement signed and back and everything executed, then we'll process a change order to complete the sidewalk widening all the way to Meridian Road where it's currently being widened. So that's a huge milestone to kind of get that in place, and we'll have that continuous 5 or 10-foot sidewalk from 10 Mile to Pine, Locust Grove area.
Mm-hmm.
Pretty cool. It's a big stretch. I mean, we got the little Fairview Avenue segment to work on that's in design, but with the exception of that, it'll be a continuous 10-foot sidewalk.
Wonderful.
So that's it. I will stand or sit for questions.
Any questions from the commission? Mike, what time is that story walk?
It's 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock? Thank you.
You're welcome.
Alrighty, hearing no further questions, Mr. Garrett White with your update.
All right, well, the recreation side, we're actually staying quite busy. To go through some of these things, Jenna Fletcher, she is on maternity leave, starting to come back part-time here and there. We keep telling her to be a mom first, but she's starting to come back part-time. We just hired a seasonal camp coordinator. We've had that position the last couple of years, and it's been a huge help with that. She's planning to go out to a 4th summer camp site this year with the schools. She's also starting to piece together the guide. And in her absence, Jake Garrow and I have been kind of tag teaming her position, and more Jake than me because he just came from that position. But Jake's been working on the guide as well and getting all that stuff out. I've been working on posting all the 32 job openings for the summer camps that we have open right now. So if you know anybody that's 18 or older wants a summer job, point them our way or point them to the website to apply for the summer camp coordinator job. Jake at Home Court's been working on we're going to replace the curtains this year. That's kind of a task that's going on. That project will start June 14th, I believe, or 15th, whatever that Monday is. And that'll last a couple weeks to get that stuff done. As you guys may or may not have heard, the Bay 5 renovations are finishing up. We're having an open house on Friday from 10 to 1. Some refreshments, can get over, check out the new renovation. Bay 5 has a new flooring in there. It's a multi-purpose flooring. Looks like hardwood, but it's more of a laminate, pretty cool to play on. The pickleballers like it. We've had volleyball. We've had rave reviews from our classes that are going over there right now. There's some tumbling classes, mommy and me classes, things like that. I believe at 10 o'clock on Friday, you'll see a tumbling class that's happened over there, or mommy and me class, like Shelley had mentioned earlier. But even the restrooms, people are raving about the restrooms. We have 4 family restrooms over there now that people can use and access, as well as the men's and women's restrooms. They flow, they function. We've had major events over there already when it comes to basketball, a wrestling tournament, martial arts tournament, things like that. And there wasn't a huge line going from the restrooms all the way across the first court. It was actually functioning the way we want it to function. So it was a success in my mind having those redid or renovated. So that's happened over at home court. Renee, with the special events, she's constantly working on special events. I haven't heard the word Christmas in a couple of weeks, but I know she's working on some of that stuff and working on sponsors and things. So she's really hitting that up. Audrey, our new arts and cultural coordinator, she's obviously overseeing the Historic Preservation Commission, the Meridian Arts Commission, and the gallery upstairs. So she's drinking from the fire hose and doing very well as well. Maggie, you just heard from. One thing that I know when we heard from Chelsea a couple months ago, she mentioned the bake sale and raising funds for the Holiday Classic tournament. Maggie had a big part of that too. So to give her credit for that too, her and Chelsea raised what, $800 or something like that, or close to it, which is nice. Basically Tyler and I's combined total over the years. She beat it in 1 year, so she did an awesome job with that. So her and Chelsea get kudos for that. But she's got the volleyball and basketball and softball stuff rolling right now. And as she mentioned, we're in the interview process for the Rec 1 coordinator's position that's up right now. Jeanette and Vicky, rock stars up front. They've been killing it when it comes to all the registrations and shelter stuff. Our shelters registrations opened February 1st. So we've been getting a lot of that stuff coming in online, as well as people calling and doing that. Myself, been working, like Steve said, on budgets, interviews, MYB agreements, community center task, stuff like that. But the main thing is, now that the fields are open, is all the field reservations are coming in, and the ball field reservations are coming in. And I had 2 conversations today, just on coaches, youth coaches, or even adults trying to find a diamond or a ball field. From March through middle of July, all I've got is a couple Sunday afternoons available here and there. All evenings are booked on all that stuff. So our ball fields the weather's turned a little bit, so people are wanting to get outside or itching to get back out there and play. So that is the recreation update in a nutshell.
Do we have any questions from the commission? I want to also add, I want to commend Audrey as well. She's also tackling wonderfully the role of teen activities advisor for the Mayor's Youth Advisory Council. So I want to commend her for juggling that as well.
Glad you mentioned that's one thing I forgot, but yeah, she's doing a really good job. So thanks for mentioning that.
Absolutely.
Mr. President?
Commissioner Jensen.
So Garrett, last year, when we rolled out the online reservations for the shelters and other amenities, we saw a massive jump in the first couple days of that, instead of having the front staff being inundated with, I need to do this, I need to do this. Are we seeing that same trend this year, where we're seeing most of the reservations being online versus phone calls or people coming into the facility?
Yes, I would say we are seeing the majority online. I got to stay up until midnight on Friday night to flip the switch, for lack of better words. We should change that next year to maybe 8 a.m., something like that. But yeah, I got phone calls the very next day from people that were waiting for me to flip the switch, saying it was 12:15 and my ball field was booked, or 12:15 and man, my shelter was. Is there anything else we got? So we're trying to help them out. But we had, I want to say Saturday, after flipping the switch, there was over 30 to 40 shelter reservations. Short story is we brought in like $5,000 on the weekend just from online reservations. I don't know if that included fields or not, but I don't know if you remember, Steve, or not.
I don't know for sure, but they did go live over the weekend. And so all of the initial reservations were online this year. The big jump that you're remembering from last
Yeah.
year was actually our first day of class and camp registrations from our summer activity guide. That
that's
was
right,
our
okay.
really, really big day that I remember, touting to you. But so I would say yes, the shelter reservations are seeing the same kind of response. Interestingly, we've been tracking phone calls, and the numbers of phone calls to the department have still been increasing in spite of more than half of the registrations moving to online. So we're trying to answer the question why. I don't have the answer yet, but that's, what are people calling for? How can we get that information to them a better way? So far, we've only been tracking January. The highest numbers are still related to classes and camp registrations or sports registrations. So anyway, we're tracking that. We still have a lot of phone calls coming in, even though we are being successful at moving more and more registrations online.
So that's I would assume that's helping with staffing pressures so that you're not.
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Hearing none, thank you so much. We appreciate your update. With that, it is that time of the day. Do I have a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting?
Mr. President,
Commissioner Steele,
I'd like to make a motion that we adjourn tonight's meeting.
do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Commissioner Greer. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. We will stand adjourned until March 11th, Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Thank you.